Welcome into the first mini-sode of On the Marks. I am Jason Marks, and today's topic is a little bit of a recap from the last couple of weeks, as it seems that the tired, stupid, and absolutely pointless argument of college football scheduling continues to eat at the minds of those in the Power Four. Now, as we know, last season, SMU and Indiana got into the college football playoff last season, and that has not set well with the SEC to where they haven't let it go. And the talks throughout the entire offseason has been about what the college football playoff format is going to be after this season heading into 2026. And Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, had a few words in regards to that.
Always been a fan of there are no allocations. Like, take the top 8 back in 2019 when people were talking about expanding. Take the top 12. I was an advocate for that. In fact, went back through with colleagues this spring. I could take the top 14, top 16. We have agreed, and I think last week there was some misunderstanding communicated about a memorandum of understanding. So in that memorandum of understanding, the top 5 conference champions have a role. So that's, unless you're going to go tear up the MOU, which maybe some other people want to do because of their concerns about the decision-making authority, that very clearly in that memorandum of understanding is granted to the combination of the SEC and Big Ten. Ultimately, we have to use that authority with great wisdom and discretion. But unless people want to tear it up, we're going to have 5 plus 7, 5 plus 9, 5 plus 11. As I understand, doubling down, so that was one of the phrases last week. That's part of a gambling experience, as I understand. And you always want to have a really good set of cards. You want to have a good hand to play, right? And I think we have the best hand to play.
So again, you were thinking, and as I did mistakenly, that the SEC was trying to make this push for 4 automatic qualifying bids for the SEC and the Big Ten, where the ACC and the Big 12 only got 2, which is really ridiculous. But it actually turned out that it was the Big Ten that is making this push. And of course, Kirk Cignetti, the head coach of Indiana at Big Ten Media Days, was asked in regards to dropping a matchup with Virginia and replacing it with a group of 5 school. And here's what he had to say.
Any football guy that's objective will tell you there's a Big Ten and the SEC. All right? 12 of the 16 SEC teams play 3 G5 or an FCS game. 12 of those teams play 36 games, 29 G5 games, and 7 FCS games, and 1 less conference game. All right? So we figured we'd just adopt SEC scheduling philosophy. Some people don't like it. I'm more focused in on those 9 conference games. Not only do we want to play 9 conference games, okay, and have the 4-4 championship, the playoff format, okay, we want to have play-in games to decide who plays in those playoffs.
So Kirk Cignetti tried to throw a little bit of shade back after getting a little shade from the SEC fan base and its members of their state media. He wasn't the only one.
There's other leagues that claim depth, but the SEC's had the same 6 schools win the championship since 1964. The same 6. Not a single one has been different since 1964. It's top heavy to me. That's not depth.
Now let's look at these 2 comments where I understand that maybe they're trying to defend their players, for all the flack that they get because they didn't belong in the playoff. But I think they could have done a little bit of a better job. Kirk Cignetti, who was a former assistant at Alabama when Nick Saban was there, was trying to throw a little bit of shade at the SEC in regards to their scheduling, which in And a couple of years ago, it would have been very, very accurate. But the thing about it is, you look at the week 1 schedule, you're seeing the SEC matching up with the ACC, with the Big Ten, like Texas, Ohio State, like LSU and Clemson. So there's a little bit of progress there, but I get wanting to throw shade at the conference that has basically been bad-mouthing and trying to belittle what your team accomplished last season, even though that your schedule was a bit advantageous. In regards to Rhett Lashley and what he was saying, I wouldn't entirely dismiss it because, let's be honest, since 2009, the SEC rode the tidal wave of Nick Saban and Alabama's tenure. Let's just face it. Yes, they've won 15 national championships in God knows how many years, but 7 of them were won by Alabama. 3 were won by LSU, 2 were won by Florida, 1 was won by Auburn, and 2 were won by Georgia. So where is everybody else? What has Ole Miss contributed to the SEC success in the last decade? What has Tennessee contributed other than, one appearance in an SEC championship in the 2000s and then their playoff appearance where Ohio State absolutely obliterated them? So I wouldn't say that Rhett Lashley's entire statement was accurate, but it does point out some interesting things to think about. But the main thing is that this pissing contest about scheduling has gone beyond ridiculous. Because, Indiana plays a weak schedule. And I remember Greg Byrne, after Alabama got left out of the playoff last season, that said, maybe we need to reevaluate our non-conference scheduling since we got left out of the playoff. That's just paraphrasing. But the thing about it is your non-conference schedule did not keep you out of the college football playoff. It was the fact that you lost to teams that your team was supposed to beat was the reason you got left out of the playoff. And one of those teams beat you by 3 touchdowns. Schedule had nothing to do with it. And here's another question that I'll ask. That if an SEC team comes up short this season, how did anybody else's schedule outside of the conference affect their performance? Like, directly and purposely affect their performance in that game that they were supposed to win, but they didn't lose. But they didn't. How would Clemson's schedule going to affect an SEC team that got upset by a very less superior, more inferior team? Tell me that. I'm willing to hear it. Put it in the comments section. I would love to hear your logic because I'll tell you the answer. The correct answer is it won't. All this talk about evening the playing field when it comes to determining the playoff and all that stuff. It's not going to happen. And you know why? Because there's 130 teams in college football. And the majority of the talent goes to either the SEC or the Big Ten. So you're really not going to have a balance, and especially scheduling too. As big as these leagues have gotten now, where they're up to 16, 17, 18 teams, you're not going to have a balance when it comes to scheduling. One team in the SEC is going to have a gauntlet, while the other one may have a much more advantageous schedule. How do you fix that? You're worried about, playing 8 games or 9 conference games and your team's missing the playoff. There's no way to even the playing field. So why are we having this pissing contest and all of these insecurities and this little dick syndrome about scheduling? Why are we having that? Because in the end, it does not matter. Another team's schedule, it's not going to directly perfect or impact the performance of your team. Let's just see what they had to say at Big 12 Media Days.
But long term, knowing the progress we're making, the investments we're making, it's the right format for us. And I'm doubling down today on 511. And I know Jim Phillips will, and I'm sure some of the other conference commissioners will as well.
Well, That's not what I was expecting. I was expecting for them to take shots at the SEC and the Big Ten and about their fair share. But Brett Yormark just said that they want to earn it on the field. Respect. Respect. And I'll say this, that he is becoming one of my favorite conference commissioners. Given the situation of the Big 12 after Texas and Oklahoma left for the SEC and what he was able to do to preserve and save that conference, the guy is pretty good. Now, the one thing that I will say is a big insecurity in regards to the Big 12 is now they're getting rid of the whole media poll because Arizona State was picked at the bottom of the barrel and wound up winning the whole thing. Because I'm sitting here going, it's a media poll. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be silly. It's not supposed to be taken serious. Some people do take it serious, and those people should be laughed at. But I say keep it because look how Arizona State used it. They looked at that, Kenny Dillingham, and then said to his team probably like, oh, they got us the pick to finish dead last? All right, bet. And they used it for motivation, which I see as probably the best purpose of having those media polls, because those teams who have nothing to lose and there's no expectations can look at that and go, okay, let's go out and prove them wrong. But we've got to stop with this whole thing about scheduling. At this point now, it's time to go back to a Gen X mindset, I guess you could say, and say, all right, it's time to stop talking. It's time to throw hands. Let's just take it out on the field and let's throw hands. It's almost like one person is talking about the other person because they don't like what they're doing. And then the other person turns around and takes a shot. Where I was growing up in Zip City, Alabama, as a student at Wilson High School, if two people had a problem after school, they met at the Rod Townsley's General Store and they threw hands. I think it's time for the Power Four to meet at the General Store after school and start throwing hands. And we're going to find out who the real ones are. Because in some of those fights, it'd just be like a big bro-off where they're just walking around in circles, trying to peacock. And then nothing happens. By then, the sheriff's deputy comes in and clears everything out. Or there's two real ones in there and they go and throw hands. If we want to find out the real measuring stick of college football, we're going to need to see a lot more of that.